Hello, this is TJR, and today I want to talk about the movie Deliver Me from Nowhere, written and directed by Scott Cooper and based on the 2023 book Deliver Me from Nowhere by Warren Zanes, a biopic that details the recording of Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska album, alongside his then personal struggles with depression. The story of Nebraska is that after a very successful tour for his album, The River, Bruce Springsteen rented a home in New Jersey and bought a Tascam 4-track home recorder, a then new technology that allowed musicians the ability to do multi-track recordings for the first time outside of a recording studio. His intent was simple: write and record demos of the songs for his next album with the E Street Band as prep work before going into the studio. The idea being that it would be more efficient and cost-saving to have the song structures and arrangements more complete on day one versus the normal procedure of working all of this out in the studio first. But as these home recordings continued, he began to realize that what he thought were just demos were actually the best representation of the songs he was writing and the stories that he wanted to tell with them. But the recording of an album is not the only story within this film. Paralleling this narrative is the story of how, through this very isolated writing and recording process, Bruce Springsteen began to encounter long-buried demons from his past, childhood memories and trauma from an abusive and mentally ill father that he had kept buried deep in his subconscious for decades. At this point in his life, Springsteen had just scored his first #1 hit with the song Hungry Heart. He was transitioning from cult music hero to mainstream pop success, and his record label and manager could see that he was verging on superstardom and that his next album could be the deal breaker that would bring him to that point. He was also, however, struggling with complex feelings regarding gaining popularity and success. Now, I know that some of my fellow musicians can't understand this. After all, popularity and success is what you work for as a musician. Everybody wants to be #1. And Bruce Springsteen didn't just work hard to get there, he epitomized this hard work ethic through his rigorous touring and recording schedule, not to mention his extended live shows, where night after night he performed each show as if his life depended on it. But given the demons he was trying to suppress, I have to imagine that he was, at this point in his life, quite the dichotomy of a person. An artist who wanted success and superstardom as much as his contemporaries, but whose subconscious demons were possibly telling him, "You don't deserve this." At least this is what I got out of watching this movie. Writing and recording songs in isolation, like he did in a rented home in Colts Neck, New Jersey, and only 8 miles from the city he grew up in, must have certainly stirred up too many memories. And as a result, he began to tap into the demons he had been suppressing as he wrote songs about people like his parents, lower to lower middle class people struggling for their share of the American dream and being denied it. Songs about people praying and struggling for redemption and not finding it. And songs about people on the fringes of society, some of who are close to falling off and some who have checked out completely. Watching the film, I found it amazing to see how through art, Springsteen was able to channel these demons into something both personal and yet still identifiable to so many others who listened to his art, even if he was channeling all of this subconsciously, which is what I believe this movie implies. The only problem, though, is that once you channel these bottled up demons, it's pretty much impossible to put the bottle top back on them again. I have read that Springsteen was already struggling with depression prior to all of this, but it feels like this was the breaking point for him, as the film portrays him having a psychotic break. When I listened to the recently released Electric Nebraska sessions, and with the benefit of hindsight, it's easy to hear that these home studio recordings were the best representation for the stories these songs wanted to tell. And in the film, we get a scene set within those recording sessions where Springsteen and the E Street Band record Born in the USA. It's the iconic version that we know today. And everyone surrounding Springsteen instinctively knows that this is it. It's not just a hit. It's what's going to push him over into superstardom. The recording crew, his manager, John Landau, the record label exec that Landau plays the final mastered home demos to, even Jimmy Iovine, who worked as an engineer on Born to Run and portrays himself in a voiceover cameo, and who, after hearing Born in the USA for the first time, tells Landau that releasing Nebraska is nuts right now. And right alongside manager John Landau and Columbia Records exec Al Teller, he's correct. Releasing Born in the USA would have made superstardom the next stop for Bruce Springsteen. But Springsteen's own subconscious tells him, no, you're not ready for this. Not yet. A Springsteen who was not coping with mental illness could have seen this too. If global stardom is the goal, then the smart thing to do would be to ride the popularity wave that Hungry Hearts started and release Born in the USA now. And after you've ridden that wave for a few years, release the acoustic folk album as a counterpoint, a kind of cooling off period for both artist and audience, and to reset expectations while you work on what you will probably call the real follow-up to Born in the USA. But Springsteen needed to reset himself first, and his subconscious knew this. He needed to exercise those demons, and releasing Nebraska would be the first step towards this. His manager John Landau realized this also, and so he facilitated this with his label and record exec Al Teller, who wasn't happy and wanted more anthems from Springsteen, like Hungry Heart, but who also said they would respect the artist's wishes first. His manager, who until this point was also the closest thing to a therapist that Springsteen had, implores him to get professional help, something he will do near the film's ending. One of the big complaints I hear about music biopics is that they are oftentimes very historically inaccurate. So I think it's important to point out that Deliver Me From Nowhere is one of those rare animals, a music biopic that, from everything I have read, strives to be very historically accurate. Where the only major element of its history that is changed is the love interest character, who is a fictionalized composite character of some of the women Springsteen dated during his early career. Played by Odessa Young and named Faye Romano, the character of Faye is there to help illustrate the emotional difficulties Springsteen had with allowing himself to be open to a romantic partner. Another thing that the film does differently is that it rejects what most audiences want and expect from their music biopics. I personally think that most audiences who are longtime fans of a particular band or recording artist want from their biopics is a celebration of the artist and a jukebox of their greatest hits. This is what both the recent Queen and Bob Dylan biopics did to one degree or another. But Deliver Me From Nowhere rejects these tropes. Springsteen, the man, is not celebrated in this film. Instead, it chooses to show us a man struggling with depression, confused and unsure about who he is personally, not to mention who he is about to become. A man who is in danger of being emotionally swallowed by his demons and, just like any of us would be under these circumstances, someone who is struggling to figure it all out. Just like the characters in Nebraska, he is looking for peace and redemption, and through his art, he manages to pause himself just long enough to let those demons he's been running from for so long to finally catch up to him. Again, even if subconsciously. And unlike a more Hollywood-style movie, there is no big victory lap scene. There is no montage of self-improvement. Just a man who quietly realizes that he needs help. In his first therapy session, he is asked what led him to this moment, and he can't even speak. All he can do is cry. An indication that none of this is going to be easy, and that none of this is going to be quick. The film concludes with a 10 months later title card scene. Bruce is back on tour, Born in the USA is still a year away from being released, and he has what could be best described as a beginning of reconciliation with his father. It's a deliberately awkward moment between the two that indicates that healings like this are not simple or easy and don't happen overnight. I want to close this review by saying that every single actor in this film is nothing short of amazing. Burt Reynolds once admitted that the best advice he ever got at acting was from Spencer Tracy, who told them, "Don't ever let anyone see you do it." With this in mind, I'll just state that every single actor completely disappears into their respective roles. Jeremy Allen White looks nothing like Bruce Springsteen, but he had me believing he was within the first 10 minutes. This film is about a famous musician and songwriter, but it is more about dealing with depression and how even those we admire are as human as the rest of us. Those are my thoughts on this film. Let me know yours. If you want to see more movie criticism like this, please leave a like. It encourages me to continue. Everybody, thank you so much for watching, and a big thank you to my Patreon supporters who receive exclusive weekly videos not available on this channel. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Bye-bye.